Hello, this is AJ Jacobs. I'm the author of the new book, It's All Relative, and you are watching Mr. Media.
I'm Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview. You can see, hear, and read more than 1,000 of my previous celebrity interviews at mrmedia.com. That's mrmedia.com. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Apple News, Google Play, Mixcloud, Spreaker, or Stitcher, and follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And if you really like the show, please tell the world with a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. On today's show, I'll welcome back AJ Jacobs, author of It's All Relative, Adventures Up and Down the World's Family Tree. He's also the author of The Year of Living Biblically, which is in production as a TV series for CBS and is being produced by Johnny Galecki, star of The Big Bang Theory. This is AJ's 4th time on Mr. Media. Well, 5th if you count the interview we did that time the audio failed to record. Also joining us today, mid-show, will be his wife, Julie Jacobs. She has been kind of a background character in his previous books, but emerges as a bigger player in It's All Relative. AJ Jacobs, welcome back. Whoop. You know what? I made it through all that and then I said the wrong thing. Oh my God, I'm a dope. Folks, stick around.
That is funny.
AJ Jacobs is always a great guest because he's always getting himself into situations that most people would want to avoid. You know, like that year he spent literally following the life instructions found in the Bible. Or when he turned himself into a lab rat trying out all sorts of ways to get healthy and live longer. And there was that time he outsourced his family obligations and job responsibility as a writer for Esquire magazine to India. All this, and he's a pretty terrific writer and a good guy. This time around, AJ committed himself to what might be the world's largest genealogy project, the Global Family Reunion. Like all AJ Jacobs' book ideas, it began small. Hey, look, I'm a distant cousin of President George H.W. Bush. And it went somewhat haywire when he discovered he was also cousins with his wife of 15 years, Julie. And that was just sort of the beginning. Julie will join us midway to offer her perspective on husband-cousin AJ's latest endeavor. AJ's latest book is It's All Relative, Adventures Up and Down the World's Family Tree. And it truly does go all over the map. AJ Jacobs, welcome back to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Bob. It is great to be back. This is, as you said, it's my 4th or 5th appearance, so I feel I'm a friend of the show. And I am glad that it's recording our audio, even though we are, of course, incredibly handsome, and it's just nice to look at our faces.
Wouldn't it be enough for people just to have our faces and not have to listen to our voices?
You know, my grandmother used to watch David Letterman with the sound off. She thought he just had a nice smile.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, I'm glad she didn't turn it on because I think he was way too sarcastic for her. But he looked very nice.
Is this Marty that we're talking about?
No, this is my grandma. Her name was Ann Keel.
Marty. I'm sorry. Ted's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. I have read the book, folks. No. and actually, the Keels they pop up in other works of yours. So.
Right. Yeah. Remarkable man and woman.
Absolutely. Now I gotta jump to this. I think the thing I'm dying to know is, do I get to call you cuz?
Are you kidding? Of course. I mean, we are cousins. We're probably cousins like 14 times over.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. For better or worse.
It might explain a lot. Okay. All right. So look, take a minute if you would, and explain to people kind of how this got going and how it didn't. As I recall, it began as a magazine piece when you heard from a cousin in Israel. And then how did it kind of start rolling downhill and become a book and then the Global Family Reunion? Can you kind of summarize all of that?
Sure. I'll do for you, my cousin, of course.
Thanks,
it started about 3 or 4 years ago. I got a call out of the blue from this guy and an email. And the email said, "You don't know me, but I am your 8th cousin." And naturally, I figured the next line is going to be, "Here's my bank account in Nigeria. Please wire $10,000. But turned out he's legit, and he's part of this group of people who are building the biggest family tree ever. And it's not just a tree, it's like a forest. It is an interlocking forest, not just thousands, millions of people on this tree. And it turns out I'm on this tree. Barack Obama is on this tree. And you can find the connections. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So I am Barack Obama's 5th great aunt's husband's brother's wife's 7th great nephew. So very close.
Very close.
And I just love this idea. You know, we heard since we were kids, we're all one big family. But here, for the first time, we have proof. You can concretely see how you're related to almost anyone else on Earth. I love the idea. I'd always wanted to write about family. I didn't really know how. So I thought this is a way in. And I can write about not just that, but all of the amazing changes that are happening in family, like gay marriage and sperm donorship and open adoption and 3-parent DNA of 3 parents in 1 egg. It's just a remarkable time in family. And I love it because I think the idea of family is getting broader and broader. And I am a fan, because as my 8th cousin Hillary Clinton says, it takes a village.
And yeah, I mean, you mentioned that it's gotten complicated. Family has definitely gotten complicated by multiple things, whether it's, as you mentioned, gay marriage, the sperm donors, but also things like you talk in the book about how finding out that you're related to a celebrity, that complicates things, or that you find out things that you don't want to know, or that you have family members who don't necessarily want to be attached to the family tree.
It's true. And as you mentioned in your intro, I did the 23andMe DNA test, and they send you a list of all of your cousins, hundreds of them. And on that list was my wife, Julie Jacobs, who, so we are not first cousins or second cousins. We're more around sixth cousins. So that was a surprise. I actually was okay with it. She was a little freaked out, but I was like, maybe it'll spice up our marriage, this forbidden fruit. But yeah, it is going to be very complicated. I have a chapter on this guy who had 9 siblings, and as adults, they finally did DNA tests, and it turned out that none of those 9 were biologically related to the presumed dad, that the mother had something like 7 different affairs and had 7 different fathers. And it's a remarkable story because it could have been quite tragic, but luckily this guy he's like far more forgiving than certainly I would have been. He's like, my mom, she had her faults, but she was a good woman. And then the father, who knew that all these kids were not his biological offspring, he still treated them and loved them like they were. So it was inspiring.
It was a great story. I actually stopped as I was reading that. Because I sent you a photo. I was in Toronto about a week ago with my wife, and I was reading the book on vacation, and I kept stopping in the middle of that chapter to say, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this! Listen to what's just happened." And I think the most amazing part of it, besides, well, of course, now you sell it short a little bit. Not all the kids were happy with the mom.
True.
The one who told you the story was okay with it. Some of the kids were not. But it would be amazing to have the opportunity to talk to that dad and find out, okay, you knew that these kids were not yours, but you stayed with it. What the hell? I mean,
I know, it is remarkable. I think it's wonderful. And I also think there's another chapter right next to it about these twins who were from Korea. They were identical twins, and they were separated at birth, but they found each other they had mutual Facebook friends who were like, wait a sec, you guys look a remarkable amount alike. And so they got together, they did the DNA test, and they are in fact twins. And the biological mother won't respond to them. So you could say, they're both depressed about that. But I love what they say, where they said, we have lots of moms. We have my adoptive mom, my twin sister's adoptive mom. One of them was an actress, so she had a manager that she called a momager. And so I love this idea of expanding the family beyond just pure DNA.
AJ, how do people who professionally do these genealogy maps, how do they handle adoptions like that? Because you've got people are finding out who their birth parents are. I know
Right.
we went through that with someone in our family, and besides the emotional effect of finding out and how that may change the relationship, but in terms of the actual family tree, do they map the birth parents and then and include the adoptive parent? How do they deal with that kind of thing?
Well, it certainly depends on the software, but I like the software where it's sort of both. You can switch between the biological parents and the adoptive parents because, I think they're both parents in their own way. But yeah, I imagine it's just going to get more complicated. These family trees of the future, like I feel for the software designers of these family trees, because you've got, I met with a few sperm donor offspring, and they have like some of them 17 half siblings. I like them. They call them dibblings, donor siblings, dibblings, and it could go either way. I'm sure that some people find it traumatic, but some people love having all of these new siblings they didn't know they had, and then these cousins that they didn't know. So I think it expands the menu.
I mean, I like finding out that you and I are related after all these years. I've always felt a kinship with you. I just had no idea that we would one day be, calling each other cousin.
So true.
Yeah. In the book, this gave me a laugh. And we're going to pop around a little bit because there's just so much in the book to cover that I'm not going to try to cover everything. But there were some things that really entertained me. And this one was interesting. You quote in the book another guy who's been on this show a couple times and who I lost track of, and now I know why. Chip Rowe, former Playboy
Chip
advisor.
Rowe. That's hilarious.
So, how? I guess you guys were already friends before you got on this project. You knew each other.
Yeah, I think I had written a long time ago. I wrote a piece for Playboy. He was an editor at Playboy magazine, the sex editor. I didn't write a sex piece, but he would do the answer the questions. He also, I believe, he told me that he wrote, they have the turn-ons and turns-on, like long walks on the beach. Like he wrote those for the women, which that is an interesting job. And he took an interesting career turn and quit Playboy and became a genealogist. So the way he puts it, he used to write the advice column where he would tell people about contraception. So to keep the family tree smaller, now he works to make it bigger. But yeah, he was interesting, and he is devoted. I mean, there are genealogy. I didn't realize quite how passionate people were, but it is that there's a statistic from Business Week that it's the second most searched topic on the internet, of course, after porn.
Of course.
And I don't know if that's, I'm not sure I believe that 100%, but it's certainly hugely popular. And there are people, he tells me about, he's driving along and he'll stop anytime there's a cemetery. He'll stop, make his kids wait in the car while he goes and takes photos of all of the graves in the cemetery.
That's so funny. I just as a side note, he was on, I think he was the first on. He had produced the Book of Zines. He was a big collector of fanzines of different things, whether they're comics and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. He was very into that. That's how I first met him. I think at the time he had just joined Playboy, but I didn't know it at the time. And then I think when we were done, I was like, "What? You're with Playboy?" And then I think I had him back 2 or maybe 3 times as the Playboy advisor. And then I lost track of him. So it was just funny. Turned the page, it said Chip Rowe, and I went, "Wait, Chip Rowe?"
That is so funny.
So
I didn't know. Well, it's very like collecting zines and collecting ancestors. I can see the connection there. And I suppose, I have a whole chapter on, we don't like to think about it. So I apologize to you and your listeners for putting it in our mind. But, our ancestors, for us to exist, they had to have sex.
Yeah.
My great grandparents were we're doing the do.
And you talk about that, and you also talk about, and sort of related. I don't remember if it's in the same chapter, but you talk about, do these ancestors want to be recognized? Do they
Mm,
would they really want to have us talking about them and publishing them?
right.
Are we invading their privacy? I mean, it's a really good issue.
It's a tough issue. And I have one ancestor in particular. I think he's like my second cousin 3 times removed. And the only mention of him in any record is a 1903 newspaper
I
advertisement
know what this is.
for a hemorrhoid cream. He gave a testimonial about how this hemorrhoid cream was so effective. And my heart breaks for that guy, because it's like, that's your legacy. That is, I'm sorry. And I probably shouldn't have put it in the book, and I apologize.
And I believe the ad references piles.
Yes,
Right?
they used to call it piles and fissure. They had all these names. And then it turns out I looked up the cream that he endorsed, and it was total snake oil. The company was busted by the precursor to the FDA. So I don't trust his endorsement, and I feel terrible that is how he will go down in history.
Yep.
But I just reinforced it, so
Do you wish, in retrospect, that you could have included him in Drop Dead Healthy instead of It's All Relative?
That's a great point. I did have a large section in Drop Dead Healthy on healthy bathroom habits. I won't go into them now in case anyone's eating, but
Well,
yeah.
let me throw a couple more things at you here before we bring Julie in. Speaking of members of your family tree, and we referenced Ted and Ann Keel earlier. You've written about them before, but this time it was really interesting, more interesting, particularly, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You talk about their involvement with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the 60s, and how they would have him to their home. And this was, I thought, this is definitely one of the positives to your project, is you got to find out more about relatives you already thought you probably knew enough about. But here, so what surprised you about that?
Well, yeah, I was surprised and delighted. I didn't know how. I knew that he knew Martin Luther King Jr., but I didn't know how closely they worked together. He was Martin Luther King Jr.'s lawyer, or one of them, and he threw at least one fundraiser for him. And what was interesting was I got my grandfather's FBI file through the Freedom of Information Act, and it was big. It was like 400 pages, a nice chunk of paper, and it had it was alarming in one sense, because J. Edgar Hoover, I mean, that guy was thorough. He had, the names of all the kids, where the kids lived, like the college dorms they were at, what restaurants my grandfather liked. So it was kind of alarming, the detail that he went into. And of course, J. Edgar Hoover was no fan of MLK.
Right.
So he detailed every meeting that my grandfather had with MLK. And of course, that made me incredibly proud. Like, I don't think the intention was to celebrate it, but for me, it was like, wow. And this one was weird. This one, no one in my family knew. But the famous event where Marilyn Monroe wears the skin tight.
It's a great story. Yeah, go ahead.
And she said, "Happy birthday." My grandfather helped organize that, which was so bizarre. I had no idea. So I don't know. It's just weird to have these little connections to history, and we all have them. It's just how do you access them? And genealogy has given me a little door into this.
Okay, but I got to ask you, because that was a very famous moment, of course, in Kennedy history and Marilyn Monroe. Did you wonder if he organized the party and the after party?
You know what? I did think about that. I was like, did my grandfather know what was going on, or was he just like an innocent? And I did not even J. Edgar Hoover dug that up.
Got to be some information somewhere that it will surface at some point.
Maybe.
Okay, so we want to bring Julie in, but I've got two quick Sophie's Choice type questions that I want to throw at you. They're simple, one-word answers.
Okay, I can do it.
The first one is related to the book. The second one is not. So the first one, Hatfields or McCoys?
Well, I have a I know I'm supposed to do one word, but I have a chapter on how they got together and signed a peace treaty. So, what is the portmanteau? The McAtfields, the Hakois? Is that's cheating? I know.
That's cheating. Yeah, that's cheating. All right, all right, all right. Let me put you on the spot in a different way. This is
Okay.
This is an Esquire question before we break. Granger or Fielden?
That's hilarious. Well, are you asking like in a physical fight who would take each
I know.
other?
I'm saying Granger or Fielden. You respond any way you care to.
Well, Granger, let's see. I can give you, yeah, I can break it down. I think Granger, I remember we did a lot. I would go to the gym with him sometimes, so I know he works out. So he might physically
So you've
be.
seen him naked.
No, I actually haven't.
Okay.
But that's okay. Jay definitely.
Sorry, David. I couldn't resist. Go ahead.
But Jay wins in the hair department. That guy has fantastic hair. And Granger, of course, was bald. So I call it a draw. I mean, of course, I know Granger for 15 years. He was the editor of Esquire for a long time. So, of course, I'm closer to him. But so if I had to go just based on closeness, Granger.
Fair enough. All right, folks, we're going to take a little break. We're going to bring Julie Jacobs in, and we'll be back right after this. Julie Jacobs, who is married to A.J. Jacobs, which is why they're sitting together, is joining us now. And Julie, I've always wanted to meet you, even virtually like this, to congratulate you on the great patience you've
Thank you. I
through the
appreciate
years
that.
in being
Just call me
married.
Saint Julie if you'd like.
Saint
That
Julie.
would-
That would Jewish families have saints? I guess they do in
Yeah.
this case.
That
There
just
are
sounds
Jewish
good.
saints. I think
Oh.
I researched that when I was doing the Bible. So yeah, she's okay.
Okay.
She's official.
And that was good. We got another plug in for living biblically. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, regular readers of AJ's over the years have felt your pain. And I wanted to meet you and find out, who is this woman who lives with this? I mean, what is she? You know, she must be just the essence of patience.
It's funny actually, because I would actually say AJ is much more patient than I think, it's like a marriage. There's certain things, there's certain things I get out of it, he gets out of it. And so what he's doing, I get a kick out of, and it's always been that every project he does, I'm the control subject. I do not have to do what he's doing. There might be a few little incidents like the when he did Drop Dead Healthy, and I had to do the what was that called? A drink fast?
Oh yeah, you had to do a juice fast.
A juice fast.
Oh, she did not do well.
I made it till about noon. I was like, I'm out.
She had breakfast. It was a 3-day fast, and she literally made about 2.5 hours.
It's just not my strength. I have other
Not your
strengths, like putting up with AJ. That's
There
a
you
strength.
go.
So, I learn, it's funny though, because each time he does a project, I am a glass half full kind of person. And I always like, oh, this is going to be great because he's going to really appreciate religion and why it's important to me, or he's going to get healthier, or he's going to get a lot of knowledge. I'm not sure I ever saw any upside on that one. But, and then there's always something that's like not exactly what I expected about it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it starts to get old after a while.
Well, and this is part of my curiosity about this is that I also write for a living and have made a habit over the years of including my wife and then my son in things that I've written or introductions for this show. There've been over 1,000 of these, and you run short of ideas periodically, and so you try to connect with your family. And, I know at first my wife hated it, my son hated it, and then they tolerated it. And now my wife does not follow me on Facebook anymore or anywhere in social media. She doesn't watch the show. She doesn't listen to the show. So I was kind of curious if there'd been kind of an evolution in your thinking and your response to all this.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. I mean, he has me read chapters as he writes it, which is not my way of reading. I don't like doing it disjointed, but I do it to, give him some edits. or thoughts. And then this time, though, I did go back and read it all the way through, and he seemed surprised, like happily surprised that I did that. I generally like to, read what he's doing. I definitely.
She does have veto power. She rarely uses it. She used it in The Year of Living Biblically because there are all these laws about menstruation and when you can and cannot touch women. And I think she was like, a little less about my menstrual cycle might be good, which I think is good for the reader.
Right.
It's probably a good
I'm just doing it for the readers.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, how is it a classic example of you think, oh, this can be good for him, he's going to learn about it. And then there's all the stuff about menstruation that I didn't think about. I'm like, on the menstruation.
Well, he is a very thorough researcher.
Yeah. Well, he likes to focus on the thing that I think, is going to.
But you do I do get quite a few emails praising Julie, specifically saying we love Julie. And so I forward those to her, and I think that helps my cause.
And I will say I have two brothers, and they are super annoyed. They're like, this is not my sister. It's out to me. Like, it totally is. You just want to see what you want to see.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because in some ways I make our marriage more conflict filled than it really is because we don't make anything up, but if there's a fight, that's more interesting than reading about Julie and I sitting on the bed watching TV together. So in one sense, there's more conflict, but in another sense, like if she really gets mad at me and says something super personal, then maybe I won't put that in.
There have been occasions. It's not often, but something will happen. I'm like, that's not going into a book. Although when we meet a crazy person or something crazy has happened in our lives, I'm like, I can't wait for you to write about that one. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I know when my son started college, which is 3.5 years ago now because he's graduating soon, I stopped writing about him. And he's been a lot happier with me since then as a result. So, Julie, tell me about this. There was this moment that's a big trigger in the book where AJ's working on this book, and he's heard from Israel, and he's got cousins and the whole thing, and he starts doing his research. Oh, my God, I cracked up. And he comes to you and announces that you're more than husband and wife. Tell me about that.
Yes. Yeah. I guess I wasn't shocked by that. It makes sense. We're both Ashkenazi Jews, but it really is fascinating on both sides when you see it on a genealogical website and you see how you're related to each other and the steps, and then also when you get a biological test done, like a DNA test.
Plus, I did a chapter on first cousin marriage and how there are some people who are in favor of first cousin marriage. So we're about sixth or seventh cousins. So that is totally fine.
And I also thought it was funny so there's a very famous composer, Arnold Schoenberg, that's my maiden name. So we've always assumed I was related to him. And AJ found out he is closer related to him than I am. And I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. So you just don't know with Ashkenazi Jews where people split up.
Yeah, it was sort of a competition, like whose relatives are better. And I was always delighted, like when I found out Jeffrey Dahmer was through her, that was like that was an ace in the hole.
I mentioned kiddingly before we actually started the interview something about our dear president of the moment. Are either of you related to him?
Well, I mean, everyone's related, since the farthest cousin you have on Earth is probably about a 70th cousin. But yes, well, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is an Ashkenazi Jew, and Julie and I are Ashkenazi Jews. And, our ancestors were endogamous. That's the nice word for inbreeding. We are quite close to Jared Kushner as Ashkenazi Jews. So in that way, we're in the first family, for better or worse.
Lucky
mostly
us.
worse.
Congratulations to all of you. Wow. Julie, have you had a favorite project over the years that you've been drawn into, directly or indirectly?
It's funny how you always go to the ones I did not like. I think it was AJ's dream was when he outsourced everything. It was his dream, my nightmare.
Well, why did you not? Because one thing, these people, I hired this group in Bangalore, India, to do everything for me, like email for me, and they argued with Julie for me.
Which is just annoying. That's
really?
annoying.
I thought you liked it because they were so nice. They were so polite. Oh, all right.
It's avoidance. So let me think. I guess Drop Dead Healthy. I definitely, out of all the things he's done, I think I felt more of an expert in that area than he was. So I could lord it over him. So I think I enjoyed that.
And you've also put the kibosh on a few. I mean, I've had a lot of readers who say, you should try to be the best sexpert, and you should do all the positions in the Kama Sutra.
Not going to happen. But there was also, this was of course a shortened project, but he had to do everything I said for a month.
Oh, that's right. Exactly.
But of course he picked February, so it was a short one.
Of course he would.
But that was great.
Yeah, that one. And that was the readers that said, you put your wife through so much, you've got to do one where you do everything she says. So.
Now I need the readers to write in and say, do everything she says for a year. Really happy.
The year of living Julie.
Yes. Love it. It's got a
go.
nice ring to it.
You're welcome. Sorry, AJ. I was going to say a minute ago, you mentioned, was it the when you outsourced, was it to Bangalore? Is that what you said? Or Yeah?
Right.
So it's weird, very weird timing, but overnight, I swear to you, overnight, there's a service I use for social media, or just started using, and I got an email from a woman who, it was a very lovely email. She said, we'd like to feature Mr. Media, the podcast, and write about it. Would you be available for an interview? And then she said, here's a calendar to my available times, and I hope we can work something out. By the way, I'm in Mumbai. And I thought, it's just I knew we were going to be talking about the India thing, so
Right.
just weird. Now, what about a most embarrassing moment from all this?
What about the one where I videotaped every moment of our life?
Oh yeah, that was horrifying in that. So he was videotaping every moment for, I think it was a month. And so what happens is, I understand what happens on these reality shows. You start to forget because it's just such a part of your day. And he's also was not so intrusive. He was just wearing a little camera, so it was pretty easy to forget. And I got really annoyed with him. We got into this big fight. It's all on camera. And then the next day, AJ says, I think it might be good for our relationship if we watch that video back so we could kind of see what went wrong and why. Because there was a miscommunication element to the argument. I am telling you, never suggest that to a spouse. It was infuriating for me watching myself bubble with anger. I did not need to see that. And then, of course, one of the morning shows thought it would be funny to air that. I was like, that is not happening. Not happening.
The segment was much worse without it.
Yeah,
but,
I'm sure it was.
Probably is
America
better.
does not need to see me angry.
You and the Hulk, apparently. Okay.
Exactly.
It was Hulk.
So I kind of figured that maybe your least favorite project would have been Year of Living Biblically, because it just went on and on and on. So rather than go over that too much, I am curious if some of the aggravation of Living Biblically was ameliorated when Johnny Galecki bought the TV rights and then CBS picked it up for series.
Yeah, sure. I mean, also because I like the guy who's playing AJ. And the woman who's playing me is lovely as well, so that's fun. And she's taller, 2 inches taller.
So Julie liked that.
So do we know who that? I didn't think I knew.
Oh yeah,
no,
nice Jewish girl too.
It is actually happening. We just went out to LA to see episode 7 taped, and it's going to air starting probably January. And I am being played by this guy named Jay Ferguson, who was on Mad Men. He was Peggy's boyfriend on Mad Men.
Yeah.
Well, he ended up with Peggy.
He had a huge beard on that show, so I think that's why they cast him.
Oh, that's cool.
And AJ found out that both he and AJ kept their famous beards.
That's
they both
true.
have it.
That's
a fun fact.
So we were thinking of combining them and selling them on eBay. And
gross.
That's awesome. And Julie, who's playing you?
Her name is Lindsay Kraft. and she is lovely from the New York area.
Yeah, she has. She was on that Jane Fonda HBO show, I think, for a bit.
Oh, Frankie and Johnny? Frankie? No, not Frankie and Johnny.
Maybe I'm making that up.
The one with Lily Tomlin?
Right.
Okay.
Can you hold on one second? Sorry. We're having some plumbing issues here.
That's okay. Well, so AJ, I got a question for you. Well, Julie comes back.
I'm here.
Okay, no problem. So all right, so I'll save that question for a second. So, are either of you nervous? I mean, it's interesting. You're just out there, so this is a good time to ask you. Are either of you nervous at all about being portrayed, and are they using your names in the show?
No, I'm Chip, and Julie is Leslie. And I am, honestly, yes, I am quite nervous because I have no control whatsoever. And I think the people doing it are super talented, but, who knows? What if they turn me into some kind of, like, fetishist? Nothing wrong with fetishes if they're safe and respectful. But anyway, I have no control, so who knows? But it's a fun ride. It's a fun ride. I do enjoy it.
Yep, they were very nice.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's real life. It's real life, Bob.
Totally. And spectacular timing with the show in that, Galecki and Jim Parsons and Kaylee Cuoco had been signed to these 2-year extensions, and obviously when those things happen, they get little perks. For Parsons, it was Sheldon. He got his show. Galecki has his show, which is your show. Haven't heard anything about what Kaylee Cuoco is doing, but boy, when I saw that in the trades, I went, man, congratulations. And I think I sent you a note. It was so cool. It was just so cool.
I didn't expect it because I've had several articles and books optioned over the years and nothing ever happens. They always fizzle. And that's what I expected. The Year of Living Biblically has actually been optioned maybe 6 or 7 times.
Right?
And things are, at one point, Marlon Wayans of the Wayans brothers was going to play me. And another point, they were going to do a reality show where it was like the Bible Olympics, and people were holding these stone tablets and running up a mountain. It was crazy. So I never expected it. It was a total shock when it actually got greenlit.
Well, I feel your pain. I've only been through this once. We had one book that was optioned by Jerry Bruckheimer and Warner Brothers, and they made 2 pilots. For the first for CBS with Mira Sorvino, and it came down to that show and Elementary, which of course we know Elementary got chosen, and then they did a second pilot a year later, which blew our minds for TNT, and they went with the other show. And so,
what was the pilot?
It was called Trooper, but it was based on the book The Profiler. I'd done a book with a criminal profiler.
Right. Yeah.
Female criminal profiler. And so Mira Sorvino starred in both pilots. I've always blamed her.
Oh, she did the TNT one too?
Yeah, she did both. And I thought, listen, if it didn't work the first time, maybe you should. Anyway. All right, so we only have another minute or two. Couple other things. I'm curious, you guys did the 23andMe testing, which we have the tests here. My wife, she agreed that we could get the test, but now she won't commit to doing the test. So for people like us and other people who are thinking about it or just can't bring themselves to it, what do you say? Give me the pro case.
Well, I agree with your wife that there are some serious cons. So I'm not saying you should definitely go all in, because our grandkids, these things are eventually going to be hacked, like everything. So our DNA is going to be out there, and maybe I apologize to our 5th grade grandkids who are like, what were you thinking? So there are some downsides. I find it overall, I'm glad I did it. I love knowing about how much Neanderthal DNA I have. That's always fun. I'm a little lower than average, which I don't know whether that's emasculating or not. But and what do you think, Julie? Did you like it? Are you glad you did it?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I mean, we're definitely a little bit more exhibitionists and putting stuff out there. I mean, AJ's mom.
I prefer the word open than exhibition.
Okay, we're more open.
Transparent.
Transparent. And yeah, it didn't really bother me. I thought it was interesting. Didn't think about it long term.
By the way, you know, in this day and age, saying that you're open connotes open marriage, and saying transparent connotes you know, transgender.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
And I do have a chapter in my new book on polyamory and open marriages, but that is not something we experimented with.
Okay.
Although I am very much in the favor of a sister wife, because I watched Big Love and that looked like a good system to me.
I'm all for it, honey. If you're watching. And the last thing, AJ, what's next? Do you have another book started? Are you?
I do, and I do also want to give a plug to Julie's. Got people are no longer interested at cocktail parties about what I do, because I think Julie's job is more. She has a company, Watson Adventures, that puts on scavenger hunts.
Isn't he nice to give me a plug?
He is good.
It's terrific. It is a fun thing.
Well, and it's mentioned in the book, but we didn't get to talk about it ahead of time, so I didn't know. You know, books are done a year and a half, 2 years ahead.
Okay.
So plug away. Is there a website while we're at it?
There is, watsonventures.com. We do hunts across the country. We're in about 30 cities, and we do them for the public on the weekends in about 8 cities, and we do private hunts for corporate groups and birthday parties in the full 30 cities. And they're in museums and historic neighborhoods, so it's a great way to like get to know a new neighborhood or see a museum. We have themes like this time of year we do a lot of haunted hunts and murder hunts, although murder is popular all year long. And then we do
Really? Big in Chicago, I hear.
People love murder. And we do naked at art museums where you get to go around not naked, but get to see the nude sculptures and paintings. And we have Harry Potter themed ones, and et cetera, et cetera.
Is there any? You're in St. Petersburg, right?
I am, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do private hunts in Tampa and St. Pete. So at the Art Museum in St. Pete and in Ybor City near Tampa. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then my next book is it's a shorter book. It's for TED Books. The TED Talks has a little book division. And I'm taking something that I love, my morning cup of coffee, and I'm trying to thank every person involved in making it. So I went to Columbia and thanked the guys who picked the beans, and the truck drivers, the logo makers, the guy who made the tires for the truck and got the rubber. So the idea is thousands of people are involved in every little thing.
Oh, cool. Very, very cool. All right. Folks, you can find AJ Jacobs' the latest book. It's all relative. Adventures up and down the world's family tree in great bookstores everywhere, or you can order it right now at a great price at MrMedia.com. If you're watching or listening to the show on MrMedia.com, below the video, you'll see the cover of the book. Click on it right now. You can download it as a Kindle or an ebook, or I understand via drone. You could have it within an hour, perhaps, to your apartment or condo, your brownstone, your farm, wherever you may be. And all of his other books are available on the website as well. AJ, is there a website you want to direct people to for you?
ajjacobs.com is my personal website, yeah. And it's just one click away. Just click on that.
Come on, cousin.
Come on, there you go. And you're on Facebook and Twitter as well, I presume?
Exactly.
All right. Listen, before I let you guys go, before the show premieres, I want you to come back and talk about it, if you will.
Of course. Listen, I feel we're friends of the show. We'll be back.
Cousins of the show.
Exactly.
Cousins of the show.
Friends.
So, AJ, Julie Jacobs, great to see you. Thank you so much. Congratulations on just an incredible year. And thanks for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Media.
Receiver, turn your back.
Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Oh, so many cousins. In the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hi, this is Rich Scheidner. And if you've ever wondered what it was like to be a stand-up comedian in the 1980s, I'm going to do you a big favor. Instead of billions of dollars for a time machine, you can just spend $24.95 and buy my new book, Kicking Through the Ashes, My Life as a Stand-Up in the 1980s Comedy Boom. It will save you money and give you thrills. It will take you there. Go to my website, richscheidner.com, go to amazon.com, and buy this book.